So how many of us remember that song? How many of us know the Beatles version? How many of us know the Joe Cocker version? Okay, so we're kind of splittish. All right, so here's another question. How many of us remember the TV show that used to have the Joe Cocker version at the beginning of it? Okay, so like the 8 of us that are about my age range. Okay, what TV show was that? Wonder Years, right? If you've never seen the Wonder Years, it's a coming-of-age story of a kid growing up in the 60s and the 70s, revolving around a kid named Kevin, his best friend Paul, and his love interest Winnie. And basically, those friendships mold everything in Kevin's life, okay? And when the show ended, Kevin, as an adult narrator, he closed out the series this way. He said, "Growing up happens in a heartbeat. One day you're in diapers, the next day you're gone. But the memories of childhood stay with you for the long haul. I remember a place, a town, a house like a lot of houses, a yard like a lot of other yards, on a street like a lot of other streets. And the thing is, after all these years, I still look back with wonder." And then the series was done. I think his kid said, "Hey, Dad, come play catch." And he said, "Okay, I'll be there," something like that. But basically, that was the end of the series. And what we learned by watching that show is that friendship is truly an important thing. To have friends is a gift from God. And now that this is the Sunday after Thanksgiving, I hope that you haven't already lost your heart of gratitude. Right? Like, oh, Thanksgiving's great on Thursday, and by Sunday, I'm not even thinking about thankfulness. I'm thinking about buying things and wanting things and getting things done, right? You know, one of the most important things that we should be thankful for in our lives is the gift of friends. And today we're going to be closing out our series in the book of Proverbs, and we're still looking at that wisdom that God teaches us, but now we're going to take a look at it from the perspective of friendship. And of course, next week, if you probably can figure this out, we're going to be starting our series for the Advent series. If you haven't noticed, there's a gigantic Advent calendar behind me here this morning, and so we're going to be using that together. And so here's what we're going to do. I want to make sure that you understand this. And actually, what I really should do, before I get any further, is I should thank all of my friends in here that came in all week long to help put this thing together. So we had my kids came and helped. My parents came and helped. Obviously, my wife was here. We also had Greg and Judy. They came to help. We also had Larry and Becky Drake, and then they brought Cole with them. And then, of course, the Rooters were here nonstop pretty much the whole time. And then also, Doug Baer was here until he got sick. So we had a lot of people from the church come in and help us assemble this thing. So I'd appreciate it if you guys would thank them this morning for all their hard work. I mean, hours upon hours upon hours. It was a much longer process than I thought it was going to be, and honestly, everybody stuck it out. I mean, it blew me out of the water that friends would show up to help out with something like that. So I'm very grateful for all of you guys. So here's what we're going to do with this Advent calendar behind me. Here's the thing. Every morning on our website, we're going to be releasing just a little Advent devotion, and you can watch it with your whole family. And what we're going to do is, on those devotions, is we're going to open one of these doors, and there's going to be an item in there. We're going to take it out, and I'm going to talk to you about it for just a few minutes. So something just to start your day through the whole Advent season, just this idea of preparation and what the world was preparing for Christ for, and really what we're still preparing for Christ's second coming for today. So you can watch it with the whole family. It's going to come out every morning, and it's going to be starting on Saturday, okay? So Saturday marks the starting of the countdown for Christmas Eve, all right? The 2nd. And then on Sunday mornings, what I'm going to do, so if you guys have kids, instead of taking them over to kids' church first thing on Sunday morning, bring them in here with you. We're going to pull them up on the stage right away, and we're going to open a door together, and I'm going to sit down with them and do a little devotion with them, and then we're going to send them off to kids' church after that. They'll go with their teachers and walk across the parking lot there. So make sure you bring your kids in here next Sunday morning at the beginning, assuming you're okay with that. If you're like, my kid ain't going to do that, I get that. No problem. Okay, and then we're also going to be lighting the Advent candles up here as well, celebrating the Advent season as the reminder of the things that we are waiting for and that they were waiting for before Christ came the first time. So, Tosh and I, we thought this would be a fun way to celebrate the Christmas season this year, is to just go through the Advent season together. So the first video, remember, is going to be coming out December 2nd, so that's going to be Saturday. But today, as I said, we're closing out the book of Proverbs. And what I want to do is just encourage you to keep reading the Proverbs at home, right? There are a lot of things in the book of Proverbs that we have not tackled because we just don't have time, right? I mean, it talks about marriage and family and the workplace and alcohol and the words we use, and it just goes on and on and on with all these nuggets of wisdom that we learn from God that we get to apply to our lives. And there's so much more to gain. So I encourage you in your private reading to keep reading through the Proverbs, even through the Advent season. How many of us went to worship night? Whenever that was, month ago-ish. All right, if you were there, you probably filled out one of these cards, okay? So Jacob gave these out as we were worshiping together. And on one side, it says, it would have been enough. And on the other side, it says, but God. And basically what the drill was, is you would write down something on the front. Like, it would have been enough if God did this for me, which he did. But God, and then you take it a step further and explain how God went over and above anything that you would ever need. So for an example, I wrote down something like, it would have been enough that God gave me a job in the church. That would have been enough for me. But God gave me a church where people know how to love me well. Right? So God did something good for me, but he did something even over the top that I could never ask for. Right? And so that was the purpose of these. And the purpose of these cards is to stir up gratitude within us. Right? As we think about it, we think about what God has done and what we should be thankful for, and then we remind ourselves that God does so much more even than what we could ever expect. And so to remember what he's done is an important thing. So I wanted to read just a couple of these cards to you, and I want to see if you guys can notice a recurring theme in these cards. The first one here says, it would have been enough to be in band, but God gave me many good friends. It would have been enough if God had given me a job, and if God had given me a close friend, but God gave me a job I love and gave me a wonderful wife. It would have been enough to have a job, but God gave me amazing coworkers who have become best friends. It would have been enough if he forgave my sins, but he freed me from my sin, gives me a song, meets my daily needs, removed my cancer, and calls me his friend. It would have been enough to have found a church, but God gave us a family that we wouldn't trade for anything. It would have been enough to have amazing parents, but God also gave me amazing in-laws. So you guys notice a recurring theme on those cards and what people are thankful for, and then what God does over and above that? What I noticed in all those cards is that it has something to do with relationships, usually friendships, right? I mean, we as people, when we have people that we're close to, we value that. You know, friends really have a profound impact on our lives, and it's usually for the good, but not always for the good, right? And so this morning, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, we're going to be talking about friendship, all right? So if you're following along with your YouVersion Bible app this morning, today's message is called, With a Little Help from My Friends. And just like last week, we're going to be bouncing all over the Proverbs, but we're mostly going to be from chapter 20 to basically in the 20s is what we're going to be in today. But one final reminder here as we get ready to close out the series. The theme of this series that we've been going through is more than just a fortune cookie. Because fortune cookies deliver vague advice and predictions and things like that. But the Proverbs are about much more than that, okay? We're learning about wisdom, and it's the type of wisdom which begins with the fear of the Lord. It's about godly knowledge, godly application, and godly skill. And so just like last week, I'll be giving you your fill in the blanks before we hit the passages. So at the top, I'm going to give you a fill in the blank, and then we're going to break it down from there. Okay, so today we're talking about 4 points. I'll give you a preview. We're talking about the value of friendship. We're talking about the choosing of friends. We're talking about the maintaining of friendships. And we're talking about dealing with conflict with friendships. So let's go ahead and hop into the value of friends. Here's your first fill in the blank if you grabbed your Connect card on the way in. Good friends are a source of comfort and good counsel. So a friend loves, Proverbs 17:17 says, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. You know, when I think of the hardest times in my life, times of struggle, there's always a friend there to help me get through it. You know, in high school, my friend Brandon, he was an anchor of encouragement to me and always encouraged me to do right. As a young adult, my best friend Rob was there to be a sounding board for me at all times. In North Carolina, when things got hard, my friend Frankie was there to walk with me through the trial. And of course, in all times, even today, my wife supports and encourages me when things are hard. So it's important to have people that you can lean on when you're going through times of struggle. Proverbs 18:24 says, a man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. So you know, church, when people disappear because times get hard, that's the mark of a fake friend. right? Or at the most, you end up with those friends for rent that we talked about last week that are just there because you have something to offer them. You know, honestly, just knowing someone is there is often enough to help us get through hard times. You know, when I was in school, my concentration was marketplace chaplaincy, which meant I learned all about chaplaincy in the history in the military and hospitals and the police force and sports teams and all that kind of stuff. And one thing that they emphasize a lot when you're learning about being a chaplain is they teach you something called the ministry of presence. And what that means is that you are just around. People appreciate it when you're just there. That they know that they have access to you, that you're available. If you're there, they know that you care. But sometimes we need more than just the ministry of presence. The ministry of presence is very valuable. But sometimes we need more than that. Sometimes we actually need counsel from our friends. So Proverbs 27:9 says, oil and perfume make the heart glad, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. See, good counsel is something that is invaluable. Raising kids, marital advice, help with house projects, tips in the workplace, right? Anytime you ask somebody for counsel, there's a great chance that whatever it is you're doing is going to be better because you asked for counsel, right? But some people don't like asking for help. We call those people men. But it can be anyone, right? And it's said that there are 7 reasons that we don't ask for help. I'm just going to give you 3 of them here. But if you look at these, you'll realize that these are all lies from the enemy. This is junk that the enemy wants you to believe so that you won't lean on friends and you won't do things better, right? One thing is that we think we can do everything by ourselves. That's a lie. And maybe you can do something by yourself, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't be better if you had asked for help. Right? Another thing is that we think that we're the only ones who have our problems. I can't tell anybody. I'm the only one going through this. Trust me, there's nothing about you that is so unique that there is nobody else in the world that struggles like you. Whatever you're going through, somebody else has done it before. Right? And so if you can find out that a person around you that has gone through it before and they'll walk with you through it, there's nothing more valuable than that. A third thing is sometimes we're ashamed of where we are in our lives compared to others. We're afraid that if we're honest about a struggle or something that we're not good at or whatever the case might be, we're afraid that then people are going to realize that we are not good at something. It's like, man, I'm really not good at this, but if I ask for help, they're going to know I'm not good at it, so I'm just going to pretend and hopefully nobody notices. I mean, that's not healthy. That's not a way to grow. That's not a way to get things done. And honestly, they probably know you stink at it. So you can try to hide it all you want, but people are going to know. And honestly, maybe your life wouldn't be so shameful if you'd asked for help to deal with the things that you're struggling with. So here's what the book of Proverbs tells us about people who don't ask for counsel. In Proverbs 11:14, it says, where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors, there is safety. See, church, there's always something that we can learn. There's always some way to get better. There's always an outside perspective to what you're going through that would be helpful. So it's very wise for us to seek counsel, usually. And the reason I say usually is because it really matters where that counsel is coming from, right? There are people you don't want to ask for their counsel. So here's your next fill in the blank this morning. Make sure you choose your friends carefully. Make sure you choose your friends carefully. See, the Bible tells us about the kind of friends that we should want to have. In Proverbs 13:20, it says this. Here's an example. Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. So you want to choose a friend who shows the type of wisdom that you're looking for. And in our case, we know that wisdom begins with the fear of the Lord. So you want to pick friends that love God. That will help you along your path. Right? I mean, it makes sense that that is who you'd be looking for to be friends with, right? Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have friends that don't believe in God. Just make sure that in that relationship, you're the one sharing the good advice. Okay? And of course, remember to take whatever they say to you with a grain of salt. If they're coming from the perspective of an unbeliever, you have to consider that. But why? Well, let's see what Proverbs 13:14 tells us. It says, the teaching of the wise is a fountain of life, that one may turn away from the snares of death. So wise teaching leads to good things like life, right? And I wonder where unwise teaching then takes us, probably the snares of death, which is also known as sin. right? So if you're living with wise people, you're going to seek life. You're going to seek Christ. You're going to seek good things. But if you're hanging out with a bunch of numbskulls, right, you're going to end up in bad places. You're going to end up in a life of sin. See, and honestly, if you want to know if they're going to give you good advice, look at their life, right? If they're leading their life in a godly direction, then you'll probably replicate some of those things. Because see, we're not meant to live our faith out there on an island. Like some people think, well, I'm going to go do some kind of like worldly missionary thing where it's like I only hang out with like people that don't know Jesus, and I'm going to be the one that leads everybody to Christ. And then you're out there on this island by yourself, and then, well, that usually leads people to failure. See, being surrounded by good, godly Christian friends is an important thing to encourage us. Yes, you can go reach people, but if you're just surrounded and you don't have anybody lifting you up, nobody praying for you, nobody encouraging you, well, you're dooming yourself to failure. Right? 1 John 1:7 tells us, but if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another. And the blood of Jesus, his son, cleanses us from all sin. See, we're meant to walk in the light together, not alone. So it's important that we seek those friendships that have light, right? That they're godly. But what about the friends we don't want? Well, we don't want to be friends with people who point us the other direction. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, do not be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals. If you hang out with bad people, you're going to start looking like them, right? That's just the way that it works. And Proverbs gives us some examples of those types of people. We don't want to be friends with people who gossip, right? Proverbs 20:19 says, whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets. Therefore, do not associate with a simple babbler. If you sit down with someone, and as soon as you sit down, you start hearing everybody else's problems and all this stuff that they shouldn't be telling you. If you hear that all the time from them, then that person is a problem, right? Did you hear what she did? Her husband is just a drunk. No wonder their children are so ragged, right? And you start hearing stuff about other people that's negative, and it's like, I don't think I need to hear all this from you. Because if they're saying something about other people to you, what do you think they're saying to other people about you? So, Proverbs 22:24 also tells us, make no friendship with a man given to anger, nor go with a wrathful man, lest you learn his ways and entangle yourself in a snare. Chapter 1, verses 10 through 19 also gives us a warning about violent people as well. So angry, violent people are people that you don't want to be around. And honestly, those people are just uncomfortable. When you're hanging out and they're just yelling all the time and they're angry and it's like you have to walk on eggshells and you don't want to be honest with them, and honestly, like you just dread their company, right? I mean, who wants to be around people like that? And actually, this is telling us that one of the reasons you don't want to hang out with angry, violent people is because you start acting like them, right? I think about my poor wife. She's not the angry person here. But I think about the other side of this where it's like, how many times has somebody given like unkind words towards me who I might even consider a friend, but they're angry with me, and then I get home and I become like them and I'm short with my wife about it. I start looking like the angry people that I'm associating with, right? That's happened too many times. And honestly, when there are those type of people in your life, sometimes it's better to stay away from them. Proverbs 23:20 also tells us, be not among drunkards or among gluttonous eaters of meat, for the drunkard and the glutton will come to poverty, and slumber will clothe them with rags. The King James calls them wine bibbers. I've never heard that word before, but I like it. I don't want to be that. I just think it's a funny word, wine bibbers. Anyway, so this isn't saying that you can't go have a beer with a buddy, right? That's not what this is saying. This is talking about people that just blow their money on stupid stuff, drinking all night, getting wasted, living that lifestyle, right? Some of us might be surprised to find out that the Bible says that we shouldn't do that. Proverbs 25:18 says, a man who bears false witness against his neighbor is like a war club or a sword or a sharp arrow. Trusting in a treacherous man in time of trouble is like a bad tooth or a foot that slips. Whoever sings songs to a heavy heart is like one who takes off a garment on a cold day and like vinegar on soda. These are people that are just bad in every situation, right? People who are inconsiderate, people who are untrustworthy, right? The type of people who will embarrass you in public or mess up your plans, or they'll break your stuff and be like, oops, my bad, broke your lamp, gotta go, right? Like those kind of people, right? The lesson here is obvious. Be friends with godly people. It's better to be friends with godly people and be a witness to those who are not. And people that are just have their mind set on sin, just avoid them. So let's say we get a friendship, we find this godly person, we want to be friends with them. How do we maintain a friendship? Well, let's look and see what the Proverbs says. All right, here's your next fill in the blank. Be the type of friend you would like to have. Be the type of friend you'd like to have. What are some things you should avoid doing if you want to be a good friend? Well, Proverbs 17:9 says, whoever covers an offense seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates close friends. Have you ever shared a secret with someone, and the first thing they do is they break that trust and they go tell someone else about it? You ever been in those shoes? Nothing else will make you more angry than somebody who just starts repeating your secrets, right? You know, in World War II, there were a lot of posters that said loose lips might sink ships. And now they have posters that say loose tweets sink fleets. But there's no such thing as a tweet anymore. So now it's going to be like loose posts, I don't know, make boats roast? I don't know. Anyway. Sorry, I'm tired. I shouldn't be talking. But see, here's the thing. Some people just spew information and they never think of the consequences. They never think about what their words can do, right? If a friend tells you something in confidence, keep it there, right? So I was going to tell you a story about how this happened between me and a friend one time, but they asked me to keep it a secret, so now you'll never know. What else should we do? Proverbs 17:14. The beginning of strife is like letting out water, so quit before the quarrel breaks out. Today, we might rephrase this and say something like, pick your battles, right? In a friendship, honestly, some things just need to be let go. You don't need to hold everything against everybody. If you have to quarrel or complain about everything to another person, you just become exhausting, right? Don't be an exhausting friend, or you just won't have any friends. So honestly, the lesson there is to get over yourself and show some grace, because we all need it. Even you sometimes. Proverbs 26:17 says, whoever meddles in a quarrel not his own is like one who takes a passing dog by the ears. I love this proverb, because what would happen if there was this big German shepherd trotting past you and you just grab him by the ears? What do you think would happen? He'd probably grab you by the ears, right? I mean, you wouldn't have him anymore. Or bite your hand off or whatever. You know, there was one time I was sitting by my friend and his mom, and they were having an argument, okay? And he called her a name that I can't say in church. And being, 13, 14 years old and seeing my friend call his mom this particular name, well, I mean, how would you react to that? I mean, the name has something to do with the dog that I mentioned earlier in the example. And he called her that in front of me, and I'm 14, so what do you think I did? I started laughing my head off. Right? What do you do when your 13, 14-year-old friend says something like that to his mom? Well, when I started laughing, his mom did not like that. She did not like that. She immediately turned to me and was like, and you, and just went to town on me right then and there, and I stopped laughing. But see, here's the thing. I wasn't meddling in their business at that time, but just me being inserted by laughing was enough to set her off. Right? So it's even worse when people actually are meddling in other people's business. When you're going through something challenging with another person and somebody else sticks their head in it, you want nothing more to do than just to do something you're not supposed to be doing to them, right? I mean, those people are so annoying. It's like, I'm so amped up and now you're in here talking, right? You want no part of that. So it's better not to meddle unless you're welcome in the conversation. People just don't like people sticking in their nose when it doesn't belong there. And the same can be said for somebody who likes joking around a little too much. Proverbs 26:18 says, like a madman who throws firebrands, arrows, and death is the man who deceives his neighbor and says, I'm only joking. If you keep messing around with someone all the time, they're either going to walk away or they're going to give you the granddaddy of all paybacks, right? Weird Al has a song called I Remember Larry. It talks about how Larry was always messing around with Al, putting Ben Gay inside his jockstrap, filling his toothpaste tube up with glue, making brownies with X-Lax inside, right? And then one day, Al gets him back. And I won't tell you what he did, but there's a reason the song is called I Remember Larry. Because Larry ain't around no more. See, people get set off when people joke around too much. Nothing will make you more angry. When it's like, dude, it's not even funny anymore. So here's the thing. We should be good, godly friends to people. That's how you maintain a friendship. It's that simple. Don't be a jerk. Don't be annoying. Don't be selfish. But there's one major problem with that advice. And that's that we're all going to mess this up from time to time, right? So what do we do when things start to go south? Well, here's your last fill in the blank. Friendships are restored with godly love, humility, and self-control. There's something to be said for a person who wants to seek restoration when things go bad. Next time you're in public, start eavesdropping. It's kind of fun. Seriously, at the mall or a restaurant or even in church, right? Just, maybe not in church, but anywhere else. Just start eavesdropping. You probably won't hear it here because everybody has their I Love Jesus hats on at church. But when you're out somewhere in public, listening to somebody's conversation, take a listen and start counting two different things that you hear. First, track the number of times somebody is telling a story criticizing someone else, and then track the number of times somebody is admitting when they did something wrong. Well, which one do you think you're going to hear more of? You're going to hear, Shelly's new haircut looks awful. Can you believe Tony said that to me? What a jerk. My boss actually had the nerve to tell me, right? I don't know why every person in my example is an attitude woman, but that's just the way it worked out. And so at the same time, then count the number of stories when somebody's going, hey, you know what? I really messed up. What do I do? I guarantee I bet you wouldn't hear a single example of the second one. Every story you hear is going to be somebody criticizing someone else. Someone who can look at themselves and admit wrongdoing is a rare thing. Because we're experts at finding flaws in other people. But people who can admit wrongdoing, they're the ones who are the peacemakers. When you can admit that you made a mistake, instantly the other person wants to hear what you have to say. And here's how you do that. The first step is the most important. Proverbs 16:7. When a man's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. You have to be at peace with God first. If you're living in a way that's unpleasing to God, you're probably going to have trouble with other people. But if you have peace with God, the Bible says that you can even find peace with your enemies. So not to mention your friends, right? So when you have to talk about it, the Bible says to do it this way. Okay, if you're going to talk about your problem, we're going to leave Proverbs for a second, go to James 1:19. It says, know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. So listen first, then speak. But think about your words and don't get angry. And the Proverbs supports all of those points. So that's why I went to James. We come back to Proverbs. Proverbs 18:13 says, if one gives an answer before he hears, it is his folly and shame. So see, listen first, then speak. It also tells us to speak slowly. Proverbs 15:1, soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Think about what you're going to say and say it softly. No need to be jagged and aggressive, but don't lie either. That's really important also. You can keep peace without lying to people. If someone's wrong, you don't have to ignore that there's something wrong. You can say it, and you don't have to tell them nice lies to cover up for it. Proverbs 28:23 says, whoever rebukes a man will afterward find more favor than he who flatters with his tongue. So we should be slow to speak so that we carefully measure our words and speak well. And then Proverbs goes a step further and tells us to speak shortly. Proverbs 10:19, when words are many, transgression is not lacking, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent. Here's the truth, church. Nobody wants to be lectured, right? No one wants to hear you go on and on and on about what you're upset about. Say what you have to say and then be done with it. And actually, if you talk too much, people aren't even going to remember what you're saying anyway. So you're thinking, Dan, quit talking and end the sermon. Okay, I'm almost there. The last point here is a big one. Proverbs 10:12. Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all offenses. Church, your friends need to know that you love them. There's no room for hatred in friendship. You can be honest about a shortcoming. You can voice your opinions and your concerns. You can lay out your complaints, but do those things from a position of love. And remember that real love is not self-serving, but it comes from a place of wanting what is best for the other person. And there you have it, church. Those are the dynamics of a friendship that is spelled out in the book of Proverbs. And so now with Thanksgiving behind us and Christmas in front of us, my hope is that your friendships, even in this room, would grow, specifically in the ways that you honor the Lord together. You know, God blesses us with people that we can walk through in our lives together. And I think it's a beautiful gift that we have, that the friendships God gives us and lays out for us is really a beautiful thing. And it's also a beautiful thing that we also have a friend in Jesus. And I would pray for all of you that Jesus is your friend. The one that you lean on when you need help. The one that you call to in gratitude when things are good. And the one that you remember when your heart is broken.